This is Ripley, and this is Ripley's roadmap to success. Ripley is a little bit wet because she was lying on, trying to go into the pool because it's a little bit hot and we were exercising her. This is her dog bed. One of the things we taught her in this session was to go to the dog bed, and which we call beach. And the way we did this is, I'll go ahead and show you. Ripley, come here. Is I let her see me toss a treat on there and beach. Every time she licks it up, we said the word beach after it went into her mouth. Anytime you use a dog treat, you always want to say the command word after the dog licks the treat up. Beach. So the first way I did this is I tossed the treat on the bed, just like I did, and let her come up and let her see me toss it, and then she licked it up and said the word beach. I did that for about 10 treats. The next step of what I did is kind of something along these lines where I kind of distracted her, and I left one on the dog bed and I didn't point it out. Beach. Don't point it out. Let the dog find it on its own. When the dog goes over and licks it up, we say the word beach. So these are to entice the dog to go there. The third way I do it is I bring the dog onto the dog bed. Come here. Come on. Sit. Well, Ripley, come here. Yes, I should have showed you a little bit of a hand targeting exercise. Basically, I would put the dog into a sit or an LAY, and right now you can see that she's leaning far away from it. That tells me that she's not fully comfortable with the bed, even though she has had no problems with it until then. Might have been because I was trying to push her onto it, which is why you really don't want to manhandle your dog under any capacity. So basically, the third way I do it is I put the dog into a sit right there. Sit, beach. And so these are three ways that I either toss it, leave it, or bring the dog on it in a sit or lay down and then say the word beach when the treat goes in the dog's mouth. The second way I do it is I wait for the dog to go there on their own. This is why I jumpstart by throwing like 10 treats in a row and the dog keeps on going over it. Then I leave one there and I just wait for the dog to figure it out. Then it starts kind of gravitating over here. Then what I do is I wait nearby with the treat, and every time the dog goes there on its own volition, then I throw the treat on the dog bed. And this gives the dog the incentive to want to come up there. I'm doing it this way because the dog's laying on the couch over here, and that's against one of the new rules that we went over. Beach. Dogs learn through consistency, repetition, and good timing. You have 3 seconds to correct or reward the dog for them to understand what's going on. Now let's talk about correcting. A lot of us as humans, we interpret rules as a negative. And we interpret breaking the rule as a positive. And that's kind of how our human psychology is set up when it comes to rules. We apply the same human mindset to rules to dogs. But dogs actually go through life probing, waiting to be corrected. They're waiting for somebody to tell them that's the line, that's the limit. If we don't have any rules, the dog after a while gets the impression that I have no rules. And that means I'm at very least peers with my humans. And if the dog thinks it's a peer with you, then listening to you becomes optional. But for us, when it comes to rewarding dog behavior and training, we only tend to think about the reward part. If the dog does the right thing, we reward them. Now, I'm a positive reinforcement person. I don't believe in punishing dogs or harsh leash corrections or alpha rolls or prong collars or any pain-causing device or discomfort-causing method. However, dogs are motivated most of the time for our attention. Now, if the dog comes over to me, I'm going to pet it and say, come. That's passive training, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. I'm rewarding a desired action that the dog voluntarily offered. Well, let's say when the dog comes over, after I start petting it, it starts mouthing me. If I keep on petting it, anything our dog is doing when we pet it is what we're reinforcing. So now I'm rewarding the dog for mouthing me. So I could do what I talked about in the video above, yelp and retract my hand. But stopping providing affection is almost as effective as providing the reinforcer or the treat or the affection. So the dog comes to me, I pet it and say, come, because that's something I like. The dog starts mouthing me, I stop petting it within that 3-second window. So if every time the dog comes up and puts his teeth on me, I stop petting it, well, not comes up to me, but starts mouthing me, I stop petting it, well, then after a while, that helps the dog start to see, well, I like being petted, and as soon as I put my teeth on him, he stops petting me. It takes a lot of repetition before dogs consistently do this. That's why everybody needs to do this each time. Now, one thing I forgot to go over in the video above is what we call a negative punishment. That's the 4th quadrant of operant conditioning, if you want to look it up. That's B.F. Skinner, and that's one of the ways that dogs learn. The 4th quadrant of operant conditioning, a negative punishment, means to deduct something from the equation. So if we go through all the other techniques that I described in the video above, and the dog keeps on jumping and barking or whatever, the last recourse is to actually leave the room and close the door behind you. Now, a dog will probably protest and bark and growl and grumble. Wait for the dog to stop for at least 3 seconds before you come back in. When you come back in, act like nothing happened. Just walk. Don't start petting the dog. just kind of chill out and just come in and do your thing. So when the dog, remember, when the dog's trying to mouth you, it's trying to get your attention. So if you correct it, punish it, spank it, which I don't recommend doing. Beach, that's the second way I've talked about it. He went there, she went there on his own, and then a treat fell from the sky. I lost my train of thought, so let me just try to pick it up. So basically, stopping and starting your affection within that 3-second window will go a long way towards helping the dog to understand what you do and do not like. Now, we also went over, I'll talk about passive training and what I call petting with a purpose. Right now, if the dog jumps up on me or paws at me or bites me or whatever for attention and I pet it, I'm rewarding the dog and telling the dog, yes, you are in charge of me. When you tell me what to do, I listen. Instead, what I would do, when the dog comes up and nudges or paws at me for attention, I give it a counter order, tell it to sit. When it sits, I pet it under his chin and say the word sit and exclusively the word sit. Come, that's passive training right here. We'll talk about this next. So if she wants my attention, sit, sit. Boy, are you wet. So I'm going to say just the word sit. Most of us talk too much. What a good sit. And I can make her more excited by using that really excited tone. So when she sits, I tell her, she comes over, she wants attention from me, I tell her to sit. When she sits, I pet her under her chin, and I say the word sit, and only the word sit, one time. Then I can pet her for 9 hours straight if I want to. She just has to do something to change her state to earn my affection. Now, after a while, what will happen is she's just going to start coming up. Oh, there we go. I just became boring, and she looked for something else. She's going to where she got a lot of treats earlier today, but it shows she understands that I'm not engaging. I cross my arms and I freeze, become boring. So for petting with a purpose, what we're teaching the dog is when you tell the humans what to do, nothing happens. But if the human tells you to do something and you do it, you get rewarded. After a while, the dog will start coming in front of you and sitting, come, to prepay for attention. Now it's offering you a desired action or behavior to get your attention rather than mouthing or biting you. Now, she's going to continue mouthing or biting and as long as that works. Sit. That's passive training. We're still not there yet. So we're going to basically redirect the dog into doing something desired and then reward the dog for doing it. And again, try to pet under the chin. Dogs feel good about themselves. Their nose is in the air. Now, passive training, which is what I've been doing here, is what I do when the dog voluntarily offers me a behavior that I want. So she came over to me. I didn't entice her. I didn't reward. I didn't ask her to. I didn't direct her. She did it on her own. I just rewarded the end result, which is her coming to me. Every time your dog sits next to you, pet it and say sit. Every time it lays down, pet it and say crash or chill or whatever your fun command word is for laying down. I like using fun command words because dogs can actually read our facial expression. You can say sit, that's fine. Come is fine. But laying down, I say crash. My dog bed, I call Venice. You know, when my dog poops, I call it Putin because I'm not a big fan of Vladimir Putin. So basically, coming up with these fun command words makes other people laugh. That, because dogs can read a human's facial expression, is added motivation for the dog to want to do the things we want. Come. So passive training is just simply waiting for the dog to voluntarily offer you the behavior you want and just recognizing it and rewarding it. The more that we do this, the more dogs are inclined to do this. A lot of the commands we give dogs, we actually give the dog in kind of what I call a buzzkill capacity. The dog is having a great time yelling at the feral cats because we're out in the country, and I call the dog in because I got tired of hearing the dog bark, and the dog comes inside, we close the door, and the dog's like, darn, I was just having a blast bullying the cats. Come. You asked me to come, I came, I listened to you, and then the fun ended. You're a buzzkill. So basically what we want to do is, and for this, if the dog is jumping up, I can push the dog off, or I can do one of these. Off. Toss a treat on the floor, and then say the command word of off to brand it. So after you do that enough, you say off, and the dog is voluntarily happy to go down, and they'll do it voluntarily, or well, not voluntarily, but on direction. So I have a couple watchwords for this because we won't realize how often we pet with a purpose or yes. And it's going to be hard because the guardian has been allowing the dog, or not allowing, she's been actually doing a lot of things to prevent the dog from doing it. But the dog's just gotten used to do it. This is how I get attention. So I want the guardian to interpret this interaction as the dog's way of saying, I need some exercise. So since I have the ability to actually do that, I think, I have the laser somewhere. Well, I've lost it. Protest. I disagree. She can disagree all she wants. Here's the laser. So now if the dog keeps on coming back to me, This is a great way to exercise your dog. Not all dogs are into this. And some dogs, this is not healthy. They get into it doing this and it's a manic state. If that your dog is it's not a healthy and they start breathing and drooling and freaking out, then it's probably not very healthy for them to do it. What I want the guardian to do is interpret every time that the dog gets really mouthy like that is the dog's way of saying, I have too much excess energy. And yellow labs just seem to have a proclivity to having too much energy as a puppy. Most of the dogs I've worked with where the people say, if you can't fix this dog's problems, I'm getting rid of the dog, have been yellow labs. And none of them have been aggressive. They just had too much excess energy. So in the video above, we talked about creative ways to burn the dog's excess energy. But by just basically coming up with these and exercising the dog periodically throughout the day, we're going to actually help the dog learn, not necessarily learn, but we're going to deplete that excess energy, which is going to stop the dog from doing all of the unwanted behaviors like the mouthing, biting, nipping, and all the rest of that stuff that we don't like them doing. All right. So let me see, what else did we go over? We went over a lot of rules. The dog really doesn't have any rules, and for dogs, they go through life, like I said earlier, we look at rules as a negative. Dogs look at rules as a way of learning. And so if we don't have any rules for them, then after a while they get confused about their position in our home. Now, if the dog also nudges you and paws at you and tells you what to do and you do it, after a while, then the dog starts to think, I don't have just the same authority as my humans, I have more authority than the humans. And as a result of that, I feel like I can tell the humans what to do, or I'm going to mouth the humans if I feel like it. I'm going to do whatever I want to do because I feel like I have the same status or rank as the human. So basically, the more that we enforce rules, the more we can start acting like a leader from the dog's perspective, because again, they're waiting for us to tell them that's how far is too far. So basically, some of the rules we went over, this is why we started off with the dog bed, is basically one of the rules is dog's not allowed to be on the furniture without an invitation. The nice thing about this, I've been doing this for a little while, so now I'm going to run around the corner and then turn it off. And now she's going to spend the next couple minutes wandering around looking for a little red dot that doesn't have a smell. I've redirected the dog's attention. Now, if you have some friends coming over, this is a great thing to do, so up, downs, or whatever it is. Set your dog up for success before your friend comes over. But for the next about 6 months or so, the guardian's probably going to have to get up and do a lot of exercise, which is why that Go Dog Go automatic ball fetching machine will be so valuable once the dog can play fetch by itself. You can say bucket or whatever the word is, and she runs out through the dog door and just plays until she gets done. Or she depletes her excess energy. So some of the rules, one of the rules is not being allowed in the furniture. And now we can force the dog off the furniture, we can get mad at the dog getting off the furniture, but that's getting our attention. Again, that's the dog's goal. So one of the things I would recommend doing is just basically tossing a treat down like I showed you a minute ago, and the dog gets down and we say the word off. I'd also recommend that guardians gets X mats, letter X and M-A-T-S. You can get them on Amazon, Chewy, different places. You unfold them. They're basically the size of a book. You unfold them. They're a big square. You put them on the cushions. They have little plastic spikes on them. The dog will not get up on the furniture with them. Now remember, the dog needs to block the old behavior pattern for at least 30 days to start developing new neural pathways. Effective neural pathways, I should say. And so we want to make sure when we're at work, the dog's not just practicing sleeping on all the furniture, because then that undoes the work that we do when we're home. For the guardian, I'm guessing that the dog sleeps with her at night. I forgot to ask this, but I would make sure that the dog only gets in the bed with an invitation and only for good behavior. So if you invite the dog up and she starts pushing at you or scratching or barking, then you can get down. There's a whole lot of floor for you. I'm sharing my bed with you. This is my bed. I get to set the rules here in my bed. And if you don't like the rules, you have a whole lot of floor to go to. I think for her, her issues are really twofold. She has too much excess energy that wasn't depleted, and I think that the guardian just was using some techniques that just weren't resonating with the dog. So we need the dogs to start to see us acting like authority figures. Each time we ask the dog, block the dog from getting on the furniture, for dogs, the higher they sit, the more rank they have. So if we keep the dog down here and I'm up here and the dog gets conditioned to want to go to the dog bed, well, then that makes it a hell of a lot easier, beach, because the dog just will go here on its own rather than us forcing the dog off or having to throw the treat. Now, if I throw the treat, I only do that the first time. The second time, if she were to try to do the same thing, I would stand here and I would flash my hand the last minute to block her from jumping back up. Other rules that I went over, a dog should not be within 7 feet of a human who's eating. I went over the 4 escalating consequences I use to disagree with unwanted behaviors. The guardian would use those in these capacities. But we can do things to set the dog up for success. We're going to eat a meal. Let's do some lasers or up downs on the stairs or whatever it is until the dog is pretty pooped. Then what I do is I help the dog practice the behavior that we want. So what I would do is go to, just a little bit late, but there you go, beach. Is I would go grab a piece of roast beef, bacon, something that's gonna meat that was gonna make a sizzle when I heat it up, And I'm basically going to come in and sit down on the couch here and put that on the table. And then now I'm going to pretend like I'm eating it, cut it into little pieces. Anytime the dog violates that 7-foot boundary that I've established, I'm going to stand up and march it directly. I'm going to hiss first, then stand up, then march the dog. And I'm going to keep doing that until the dog eventually stays behind the boundary or sits or lays down behind the boundary. Once the dog's done that, it's kind of figured out the idea. Peach. And then I can go put the roast beef away and bring my burrito or whatever my actual meal is and eat it. We'd help the dog warm up for that behavior. Another rule should be the dog is not allowed in the kitchen when we're preparing food. We can do the same exact principle for there. Microwave a piece of bacon, put it on the counter, pretend like you're cooking. And then every time the dog tries to come in, you disagree by using that third consequence, marching directly at the dog till it turns sideways or gets behind the line. And when you do that, when you're walking back in the kitchen, don't turn around and give the dog your back. So if I march towards and the line is right here, I march towards the line, the dog's across the line, I take 2 steps backwards, left, right, and I stop for 1 second. If the dog tries to come forward, I rush forward as my way of saying no. And you'll have several iterations where you do this back and forth, back and forth. Eventually you take a step back and the dog will stay. And you take another step back and the dog will stay. And I'm not telling the dog to stay, I'm waiting for the dog to stay. And eventually I can get back to where the stove is and all the rest of it, and I'm banging the pots and pans. And the dog is practicing not going in the kitchen. Once the dog sits or lies down, then I can stop practicing and actually do my actual cooking. When we're cooking, we have to make sure we're getting the ingredients in the right order and that we're stirring and everything, all the rest of the stuff. If the dog distracts us, it ruins our meal. We're going to get very frustrated with the dog, and then that frustration is going to carry over into other negative attributes. So we wanted to help the dog understand, Beach, just you're not allowed to be in the kitchen at a time when we're able to practice it. Now, I showed the guardian an exercise at the very beginning of the session on how to stop the dog from jumping on guests when they arrive. Now, I do a version of this myself for the human. If you come home and you're the only one here and you can't do the leash trick that I showed, come through the front door, and as soon as she starts jumping, immediately exit the door. Go out the door, but leave the front indoor door open so she can see you. Keep your foot up against the door if you need to so she can't bounce it open, and wait for her energy to subside. When it does, reach for the handle. You won't actually be able to touch the handle before she gets excited. Pull your arm back. So get yourself a nice lemonade or a cocktail or something like that. Expect to be outside your door for several minutes. Every time the dog's calm, you start initiating the contact. I light switch on. I start to engage and coming back in. As soon as you show excitement, I disengage. I think a lot of it when she gets in trouble is because she's overexcited. Crash. Just like us, we're not going to think the most clearly when in an unbalanced state of mind. So basically, if you just do this waiting game when you come home, after a while I was like, are you coming in or not? I can't stay up in this crazy manic mode, and so my energy comes down. And when it's calm, then I reach, and when you get to the point where you touch it and she stays like this, then jiggle it. That will get her to come up and she gets excited again. What I do as a behaviorist is I break activities down into the easiest version possible. Then I practice the first step over and over and over again until the dog behaves the way that I want for that first step. Only then do I move to the second step of the process. And I do that for each individual step until I've gone through all the individual steps by themselves. Then I do all the steps together, but again in the easiest version possible. Then I gradually start working my way back to the real world situation. So I'm teaching the dog how I want it to behave, and I'm not so much teaching it, but I'm creating a scenario where the dog learns this behavior on their own. Most of the people that I work with, I find, try to micromanage their dog. Go over there and sit down. Well, I don't want you to go to sit down. I want you to not jump up on me when I come through the door. That's what I want to accomplish. I don't care if you sit over there, or stand, or roll over, or play dead, or whatever. Just don't jump up on me. And so as soon as you jump up on me, it causes me to leave. Again, that's a negative punishment. We're deducting ourselves from the equation. And after a while, the dog's like, she ain't coming inside unless I'm calm. And as soon as I jump up on her, she steps outside again. With enough repetition, the dog will figure this out, will stop doing this. And the great thing is you're teaching the dog how to do that behavior on their own, as opposed to us micromanaging them every time they do that for the rest of their life. Another rule is we have a dog door here, but I would close the dog door at times and make her go through the regular door. Go to the door. If she wants to go outside, she's pawing at it, go over there and tell her to sit. And she's got to sit within 3 seconds. If she doesn't, then you can't be bothered to open the door. You walk away, sit down somewhere, and wait 1 minute. After the minute, go back to the door and tell her again to sit. If she doesn't sit within 3 seconds this time, I walk away for 2 minutes. Next time for 4 minutes, then for 8 minutes. I keep doubling the length of time till when I go over there and tell her to sit, she sits down. And then I open the door as a reward and she gets to go outside. And so the more that we incorporate these structured scenarios, the dogs start to see, I have to ask the humans, I have to get permission from the human, I have to behave a certain way to get what I want. Now the dog has motivation to do the things that we want, as opposed to Beach, the things that she's been doing. The Guardian's doing a great job of things, but I just think there were a little fine tuning on a lot of little things that the follow through wasn't there. And it's a very common mistake. I have one client in Los Angeles, and his dog was so excited for the leash, for walks, it was screaming, and it was a basket case on the walks. We practiced leashing that dog up, and as soon as the dog walked in front or got excited, we would stop the process. It took an hour and 45 minutes. Most people will never spend that much time. Second time we did it, it took 20 minutes. After that, it was like 7, and then after that, it was like 2 minutes. So it moved really fast, but you're going to have to get that tipping point. So again, I think for her, a lot of it is based on, I'm not giving her the treat yet because she's not standing on it, is coming up with that combination of exercise that she needs to behave well. And I think once the Guardian finds out what that is, then she starts applying the rules and the structure. She starts making the dog earn attention through petting with a purpose and passive training, or rewarding desired actions through passive training. After a while, the dog is going to be much more inclined to want to do the things that we want it to do, and just forget about doing the things we don't want, because that no longer gets attention. Or if it gets attention, it's the opposite of attention. It's the person leaving, which is the exact opposite of what I'm trying to accomplish. I'm laughing because she's like getting so close, but now putting her boom. Beach. So as soon as I stepped on it, boom, it's just raining treats from the sky. Let me see. I'm going to show the Guardian a hand targeting exercise after this. And the hand targeting exercise is just a nice way to redirect the dog's attention. So the dog started doing the wrong thing, you can kind of ask the dog to come over here and touch its nose to your hand. I'd also like the Guardian to get a little laser and get a chain. I think I talked about in the video above, but I think that's going to be a powerful way to redirect the dog's attention. But more than anything else, and the dog gets naughty, what we perceive as naughty, don't interpret it as naughty, interpret that as the dog's way of saying, I need some exercise. Beach. Edibles. And I don't mean edibles that you're not allowed to get here in Nebraska. But for her, she has a bunch of plushy toys, but she doesn't have any hard toys. The Guardian had a friend who had a negative experience with an Nylabone, and so she just decided not to get those. And it was a giant breed dog, and I think that it could be a one in a million life situation. What I like to have for my dogs are Nylabones, which are not always looking like the bones. You should have a couple of those you can put in your pocket, but I have one that's like round like a donut with some textures on it. I have one that's a forearm. I have one that's a dinosaur, one that looks like a chicken. I have one that's bacon flavored, barbecued flavored, chicken flavored one tastes like everything. But you want to have different flavors and different shapes and sizes. I have one that's a Y. My dogs really like those. I think it's a bacon one as well. Beach. And so coming up with, so the dogs need to set their teeth. She just got rid of her baby teeth, so she needs to set her teeth. So we need to provide her with some hard chewing items to set those teeth. Antlers are a great one I love getting. Real bones. Dogs can have bones as long as they're not cooked. So real bones, and I get a real bone are like about that big. They're white and bleached out, but it's a great way to, no reward this time. Beach. I don't have a treat handy, so I can just pet her and say beach. I'd also like to have, a water buffalo horn. Make sure it's solid, or at least that the walls of it are about at least a half an inch thick or so. Otherwise, if they're really thin, they'll just splinter it. That'll probably outlast the dog. And then, so coming up with these appropriate chew toys, now the dog has some things to chew on, and that might be part of the reason why the dog is chewing on us. So again, we can redirect the dog's attention, tap her, tap, 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 and she launches onto the thing, and then we let her pull it away, and then she comes over here and lays down and chews on it. We've redirected her attention, and dogs chew to soothe. So there's probably times where she's chewing because she's stressed out, and we can help her with that. The last thing, the edibles that I started talking about this segment on, are just things that the dogs can chew on and ingest. One of my dog's favorites are kneecaps. You can also get Himalayan chews, which is a cheese that's hardened. You can get tracheas, cow tracheas. I don't like using rawhides because they're bleached in ammonia. They're soaked in bleach, ammonia, formaldehyde, a lot of other nasty chemicals, and the dogs ingest them. It's not something good for them. So I like using bully sticks instead. Cows' cheeks are rolled up and they kind of look like rawhides, but they're not nasty. Let me see, chicken feet, duck feet, turkey feet, duck heads, cow's ears. You can do the pig's feet and stuff like that. Bully sticks, I would get like the package of the 6-inch ones. I prefer to get the ones from The Natural Dog Company. There's a place called Natural Dog Company. They make different dog products. The Natural Dog Company makes low odor or odor-free bully sticks, so they won't smell when you sniff it here, and it won't smell after it's gone through your dog. So I'd recommend getting some of those. She should find them here. Also, we had a Kong around here somewhere. Kongs are great to fill with peanut butter. And once you get your dog used to the peanut butter, as long as she had a bad experience with peanut butter, so try a little bit and see if it's still, if it was just maybe a cold. If she holds it well, then that's a great thing to fill the Kong up with. And once she gets used to chewing, getting the peanut butter out of the Kong, then you can actually put it in the freezer. So that way you don't have as much peanut butter on the floor, and it's harder for the dog to get it out. It really keeps them occupied. But when we have guests come over, it'd be great for her to have a bully stick or a kneecap or a trachea or whatever it is when the guest is here. And again, set her up for success, get her some exercise up, down the stairs, lasers, whatever it is, then give her the bully. And when the guest comes, she's going to be excited. We would do the door exercise that I showed the guardian about stepping on a leash. Once she's calm, we take her off the leash, come in here, and she gets rambunctious. Give her that bully stick. She's going to come over here and chew the heck out of that thing. This is the sign of a successful dog behavior session here at Doggone Problems. The dog is pretty much wiped out. We're making them use a muscle they don't use very often, their brain, which is why that scent games will really help. So I would go to the Green Spot or Wolf and Whiskers, are the two favorite shops we like in Omaha, and spend about $100 getting a bunch of those edible things so that you can actually have those available. But again, hopefully it's not an issue with peanut butter. You can use those Kongs because it takes a lot longer, and it's a good one for them to get it into. Any other questions? Make sure the guardian is eating something before she feeds the dog. She has good structure for feeding, but she's not eating. And dogs for eating is the most important activity, so make sure she does that. Also, we teach a puppy class. She's only 6 months old, so she still has 3 more months to modify her behavior. Once a dog gets about 9 months, that's kind of when their true personality